Lesson 816, Connecting the Dots, Describing Transformations Precisely. In this lesson, we'll apply transformations to a polygon on a grid if you know the coordinates of its vertices. One of the more challenging skills in this unit is describing transformations accurately. So what I want to do in this lesson, instead of take notes in the textbook, is start the note card that you're going to be allowed to use on any assessments that we have in this unit. Of course, you can write whatever you want on that note card, but this is what's been on the board for many days, and I'm going to be referring to these blue bullets as we go through our lesson today. So we've talked about a number of kinds of transformations, translations, reflections, and rotations. And if I'm describing a translation, there's specific things I have to include. Same with these other kinds of transformations. A reflection, I have to include the location of that line of reflection. And for a rotation, I have to include these three details: the degree of the rotation, the direction of the rotation, and where the center of rotation is. I'm going to ask you to pause the video and take a moment to write down this information on a note card if you have one, or just on a 4x6 piece of paper. And I'm going to be using this as we go through the activity today that we did in class. Go ahead and pause the video now and write that down. Once you have this card, we're going to be using it, and I'm going to walk through part of the activity that we did today, because describing transformations can feel overwhelming. I'm going to bring this card back in just a moment. But I wanted to give you a more concrete way to look at describing transformations. So in your notebook, we're on page 21. And instead of being overwhelmed by how to transfer this figure onto that one and how we would describe it, we're going to break it down into a few steps. Not exactly what Desmos had in mind, but I'm still going to use their space. We're going to start just by figuring out what kinds of transformations are we going to need to move the pre-image to the image. And we've just got three choices: translations, reflections, and rotations. We might need more than one of them, but there's just three choices. So I'm going to grab some patty paper. I'm going to trace the pre-image. And as you're tracing the pre-image, also include which point is A, which point is B, and which point is C, because those have to land on the correct points in the image. So here's A, here's B, and here's C. So I'm just going to work with this paper for a moment and see what I need to do to fit this figure on top of that. And you can experiment around with it a little bit. It looks like I'm going to have to flip it over at some point. Okay, I know I have to flip it over because I see that B needs to sit on top of B prime. So let me try flipping it over. I know that would be a reflection. And then it looks like I could just translate it to the right. I'm going to try that. So in that step, I just did a little experimenting. And I'm saying that I'm going to need a reflection. Gets me to here. And then a translation. Now I know this is really basic. We're going to get it a little more fancy in just a moment. But that's all I wanted to do first. Just talk about what kinds of transformations are needed. Well, now that I know what kind of transformations I'm using, a reflection and a translation, I'm going to bring out my note card and make sure that I include all of the required information to describe the reflection and that translation. I'm going to start with the reflection. And now I'm going to come down here and use this space to add some more detail. I'm going to add those required details, starting with my reflection. So, for a reflection, I need to describe where is that line of reflection? What's the line that I'm reflecting over? And we can name this a couple of ways. I'm going to reflect it over this line here. And normally that horizontal line is called the x-axis. So I could call it that. But if you just had a grid and there weren't any axes, you could go ahead and make a line and say, I'm going to reflect it over the pink line. Or you could even give it a name, whatever your favorite letter is. My favorite letter is J. I could say I'm going to reflect it over line J, if we know where that line is. So, reflect over, I'm going to say the x-axis. I could have said reflect over the pink line. I could have said reflect over line J. All I had to do was tell where that line of reflection was. So that's the only bullet under reflection. So I think I'm done describing the reflection. Okay, now when I reflect over the x-axis, I know where my points end up. Let me go ahead and mark those. I know C would land, let's see, it's 1 unit from that line of reflection, so I'm going to go 1 unit to the other side. Same with B, that's 4 units. I think it's 4. No, it's just 3. And then A is just 2 units from that line of reflection. I'm going to reflect it 2 units to the other side. Okay, so here's where it is after the reflection. And then the other thing I said I needed to do was translate it. Oh, there it is. So I'm going to be translating it like that. Let's look at what's required to describe a translation. To describe a translation, I need to know what direction my figure is moving and how far. So let me start. I'm going to translate. Let me add those required details. Well, I'm moving from here to there, so I'm translating to the right. And let me count the units that I'm moving. I'm going to count from, this is B, from here to there. Count carefully. I'm going to make little bouncy marks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Translate to the right, 7 units. So this card helps us keep track of what we need to say about a reflection and what we need to say about a translation. And then that's pretty good. But if we want to make it super nice, if we want to really dress it up, we can polish that description, maybe naming the pre-image in the image, triangle ABC and triangle A prime, B prime, C prime. And if you have more than one transformation, maybe use words like first and next. So let's dress this up a little bit and we'll have a beautiful final version. Let's see. To transform triangle ABC, I'm going to say first, you reflect over the x-axis. Then I'm going to say, then, you could say next. Then I'm going to translate to the right 7 units. To reach A prime, B prime, C prime. Reach triangle, A prime, B prime, C prime. Those primes let us know that that's where we finished up. So hopefully this gives you a way to break down what exactly you're doing. Start by just figuring out what kinds of transformations you need. Then, for each transformation that you need, look at what exactly you need to say about those transformations. And then to really put the icing on the cake, polish up that description with transition words if you need them, and any other fancy pants vocabulary that you feel confident about. Those steps will help you break down a difficult skill. Good luck.